Hey, welcome to the Wisconsin Drunken History Podcast. We are your hosts, Eric Sturgeon.
And I'm Russell Sari.
This podcast is about all things Wisconsin, history, music, culture, and beer. Although we don't often use strong language, the content is not intended for young audiences, so listener discretion is advised.
If you love the bluegrass music you hear in this intro, please check out Dang It's from Madison, Wisconsin by visiting their website, dang-its.com. Now on to the show.
Okay, welcome everyone to another episode of Wisconsin Drunken History.
Special one today.
This one is extra special. This is, of course, your weekly dose of the Dairy State, and this one is nice because it's an additional episode in addition to the one that we just released on Sunday as well. So I am your host, Eric.
And I'm Russ.
And today we are talking about all of the rich history of bicycling in the state of Wisconsin. So we have great Wisconsin music from Willy Porter, as well as interviews with James Davies from Bublr Bikes, from Milwaukee, Willy Porter himself, and world-famous cyclist Tom Schuler, who also founded Tour of America's Dairyland, a 10-day bike race here in our home state. And they usually pick different little cities around the state in order to host all those things. So it's an absolutely fantastic event, and we will learn more about that later. As always, please remember to like, rate, subscribe, review, and share with any friends that you have that might be interested in history, music, beer, or really anything to do with the state of Wisconsin, because we cover a lot of stuff here. So And also visit our website, WisconsinDrunkenHistory.com, where you can find links to a bunch of stuff, our TeePublic page for our merch, and also to our episodes, and to our email address as well. If you hit the contact page, you're going to get right to us. So this is awesome. So without any further ado, let's just jump right in. This thing is special, and this is all about bicycling in Wisconsin. Tell me about it.
So the first documented ride in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, comes to us from a young man named Joshua Town, who in 1869 rode an early cycle design which was called the Velocipede. This was a preliminary to what we now know as a bike, but was a three-wheeled cycle, so more of an adult tricycle. Yeah. It's a, what do you call it? A little tugger.
Yeah. So, well, I don't even know what that means, but I like it.
A little tugger.
Yeah.
Now, Wisconsinites who always prove themselves innovators came up with an improved design of this feature. And it actually made skis, which for us, what do we got? About 8 months of winter here?
Yeah, roughly.
A little. So hop on your little.
I can't tell you exactly how many because it varies, but mostly right around 7 to 8.
And it was actually designed and invented by Sylvester Wood. Many of the people who viewed this design as rickety, though, and is actually a rough ride. And the original Velocipede became known as the Bone Shaker.
Oh, of course.
It just rattled your bones.
If it's rickety as hell, I mean, it might as well be called the Bone Shaker.
And it was actually just due to the preliminary design. There was no shocks, obviously. There's no...
It's a really just rigid design.
It's a pedal and a chain.
Yeah.
It's nothing, a pedal, a chain, gear.
Yeah,
that's it. So a new wave of cycles would start to appear by the late 1870s, and they were known as the high wheel designs. And one of the most famous we see is in Sparta, Wisconsin, where they have the largest fiberglass bike in the world, where you can view the town mascot, dubbed Ben Bikin. He can be seen in a 32-foot high wheel bike.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of that.
And just a side note as well, Sparta is actually dubbed the bicycling capital of America. And it's a great place for bike enthusiasts. They have a lot of trails and stuff. I just wanted to throw that out there for anyone interested in biking or biking anything.
That's crazy.
And these bikes, would kind of drown out the market roughly until the 1890s, where the large biking boom in the more modern cycle that we know today. And it wasn't until 1890s where thousands of adults owned and operated bikes, roughly 15,000 throughout the state. In 1890s, it was the biking boom.
Wow, so that's insane.
Yeah, it's a quick rise, but it wasn't really so. Biking was so new that there was no laws, there was no anything. It was just so new. It's kind of like what we talked about in a J.W. Carhart, where he rode the first motor vehicle in Racine.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you say to that? There's no new. It's new. You can't really do anything.
Exactly. Yeah.
So in Milwaukee, early bicycling history, there were about 11 organizations in the city alone that were pushing for better roads to be able to ride their machines, thus becoming known as the Good Roads Movement. One such group at the forefront of which was called the League of American Wheelmen, was one of those who pushed specifically for the Wisconsin division, who actually pushed for these roads to be actually maintained.
Right,
The push went on for years up until 1901, where things took a turn in legislation. Chapter 308 authorized counties to be able to maintain and construct bike side paths along roads or side streets, and could appoint a board of cyclists who would serve as the side path commissioners. The board backed then could charge for the use of these bikes and sidewalks for not less than 50 cents, but not more than $1.
Wow.
Cheap. Right back then.
Well, back then,
guess,
I don't know if a 50 cents or $1 is cheap back then.
I mean, when you're working $1 a day, I guess it's kind of pretty pricey, really.
But also, I mean, hey, it gives you a designated place to ride safely and not shake your bones.
Exactly. So, and Milwaukee was always at the forefront. And I'm going to be honest with you, this is kind of where our podcast is going. And we're really going to a 10,000-foot view here. And at some point, we will go further into depth in each one of these categories, but we have a special for you today. We want to get kind of the start leading into the bike history of Wisconsin.
Yeah. And again, like Russ just mentioned, this is really zoomed out. This is not a specific episode. This is just to kind of introduce the thing. And then we'll do some really, really particular episodes later about main figures and main manufacturers and things.
There's a ton. So things that also contribute to the boom in Milwaukee specifically there was a publication called The Pneumatic, which was published throughout the 1890s, as well as the Worldwide Bicycling Tour and famous people from the tour like Frank Lentz, who ended up in Waukesha, sparking a statewide interest in cycling. New manufacturers also popped up throughout the state. Even the local restaurants offer specials and discounts to rates to anyone who arrived on the bike.
That's pretty cool. I mean, that's kind of like today. If somebody were to offer special rates or something like that to somebody who arrived in a completely electric vehicle like Tesla or something like that.
Yeah, and actually Trek does, like Trek in which is actually in Watertown, Madison area.
Waterloo,
I
think is the actual town.
So they actually offer for like their employees that actually ride to work, they offer them at like a special incentive to work there, which is really cool. Right. And obviously cars took, the top dog of transportation in this area, and bikes were more sidelined, and they caused a sudden drop in popularity in the state. And what was once considered to be a high-class mode of transportation was now seen more as a recreation and a child's toy. And Harley also contributed to the early influence of some of the first pedal bikes.
Yeah, 1901 through 1906. I mean, I think they were mostly known for their motorcycles, but also they had
the motor to help.
Exactly.
Basically. So, and I would just like to point out that the main reason for the development of the motorcycle, as well as many of the other original bikes, allowed their riders to pedal. Many of the other ones, like including Harley, including a lot of these other bike
motor
manufacturers.
assist.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you have the motor to help you when you have to go up a steep hill, but you also have that bike pedaling ability to also do it, and you could also start a lot of the engines from doing that. It's like a clutch.
Exactly.
It's clutched.
It's like when you push start a clutch vehicle.
And it was not until after World War II that cycles would re-emerge again as a major industry in the United States. Amongst Wisconsinites, it would soar, and places like Trek would emerge who, obviously they could have an episode of their own.
They're just a major name.
They're huge.
Exactly, yeah.
And during this time, almost all of the young kids would travel to school on bikes, as well as basket bikes, which were developed in assisting for deliveries around the states, including the largest commodity of the time, milk. So the milkmen would actually deliver on bikes back in this time in the 50s and 60s.
And I think this actually created such a main movement, as we'll learn later in our interview, but in an interview, I should say, that they didn't want the milk to curdle. So that also specified this whole roads thing, better roads.
Yeah, and according to the 1942 statistic, there was actually 250,000 bikes that were in use in the state, and actually 150,000 of them were registered to the state. And back then, there was not a lot of laws, but they were still trying to maintain bikes and registrations, which you don't have to do now.
I was just going to say, I think it's incredible that they had biking registrations where they did keep track of this stuff, where they really took this mode of transportation very seriously.
And for those that don't know, the bike trend in the state would continue to grow in the 50s and 60s as the baby boom generation, the kids of the parents who came back from World War II, these kids would use bikes for everything, including school, recreation, modes of transportation, deliveries, whatever they could do to make money, deliveries to newspapers.
For sure.
It was then in the 1960s and early 70s that the big bike boom would take place for adults of this time generation. This was when the 10-speed bikes would start to appear on the market. And everyone would start doing it on trails throughout Wisconsin.
Yeah.
You know, obviously we have a lot of trails in our state in general. And even during this time period, there was a lot of trails.
Yeah.
So Wisconsin, it also has always been a large part of the safety of cycling. One of the more famous films was in 1903, actually entitled Bill's Bicycle, filmed by William Stauber of Baraboo. Many of the county police, after receiving a lot of citations that they had to give to kids, would go back to parents who had to go to court.
I took one of these courses.
Exactly.
Back at, Tibbetts or whatever.
So instead of finding the parents, instead they could go to these like safety courses to have the kids be registered and understand for stop and go lights and all these other things that they had to maintain or they would get a ticket.
Yeah.
And kids at the time obviously didn't know a lot of these main rules because they're just riding to school.
Yeah.
Or they're just going to see a friend, or they're just delivering milk or delivering newspapers just to make a little extra money. And cities like Two Rivers would be one of the first cities to actually specifically introduce the bike lane, which we now use for transportation. It's actually everywhere, and it's easier to travel. Except
for Two Rivers. It doesn't seem like it's really in existence up in the Two Rivers, Manitowoc, or, any of that area up there. But down here in Milwaukee and Muskego, Franklin, all that stuff, it's huge.
Yeah, and in 1976, a pedestrian bicycle safety plan was developed, one of the first and only in the states at this time. And it's continued to develop. Today, we have so many trails in our state, along with the share the road laws, which we actually developed in our state. So you have to share the road with a bicycle, and they're supposed to maintain stop and go lights and everything. And actually
just as we are, yep.
Exactly. And the popularity of bikes has obviously continued to rise in our state, where in a recent survey, 49% of the residents in our state bike regularly, which makes biking one of the most popular recreational activities in our state. It's huge. With some of the rougher trails and the more off-road trails today, the fat tire biking is actually taking a huge foothold.
Well, winter bikers who still use that as their main method of transportation in the winter, as well as, like you mentioned, the more rough terrain type biking is fat tire.
Exactly. And Wisconsin has always maintained manufacturers in the state. And obviously we're going our time. This is before the turn of the century. There's been a lot.
Right.
But these are the ones that we know today. And we don't want to just go in a track, but we also want to talk about Fixation, Badger Bikes, Milwaukee Bicycle Company, Schlick Bikes, Stray Cat, Waterford Precision, Wyatt. And these are just to name a few. There's a ton.
There's
in our
a
state.
lot, yeah.
Huge number. And if you want to learn more about cycling history in our state, as this is just a brief overview, we're going 10,000 foot here because this is just a special we're putting out, and we're going to go deeper into a lot of these topics and a lot of these companies.
In our second year, because as of this episode, we have surpassed our 1 year anniversary. So we will definitely do a whole lot of this stuff in year 2.
And Wisconsin Historical Society specifically does offer a cycling history called Shifting Gears, which is one of their main things. And they actually did feature a large presentation. It was a few years ago, but there's a lot of information still out there about cycling in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And, we obviously, like we said before, we want to dive deeper into a lot of these individual topics, but we wanted to go from a 10,000 foot view here to kind of get you a special into what we're hoping to branch out to in future episodes.
And before we jump out of this main segment here of telling you the history of bicycling in the state of Wisconsin, Russ, I wanted to ask you, what was your first bike that you remember? Tell me that bike that changed your life, because I know in my life, the minute that I was able to ride a bike and it was big enough for me to do something on, and I was trustworthy enough at that age, it completely changed and overhauled this world? What was yours?
So for me, I started off obviously from a lower middle class family. It was a Huffy. It was a piece of junk Huffy. It started to get me to go to my friend's house. Later, as I grew longer legs and grew taller, as I am now 6 foot tall, my parents had Trek, an early Trek, late 80s Trek bike, which is a road bike, which was a 10-speed.
Yeah.
And I used to
travel. Tires.
Yeah, I used to go everywhere on that thing, and it was fast. And it wasn't like the carbon fiber, but it was still lightweight aluminum. And you could take that thing and go down this road 25 miles per hour easily.
That's insane.
You know, it was just nothing to me.
Yeah.
So what about you?
Yeah. So mine was, it was also a Huffy, my first bike that I remember. There's probably other bikes that had training wheels and things like that. But the first one that I remember really doing a lot of traveling on was a blaze orange Huffy called like a Mudmaster.
Yeah, I remember the Mudmaster. Yeah. It was a mid-90s bike, roughly. Early mid-90s bike.
And that was the one for me that just, it really sort of, it really made the world a different place for me as a kid, as a youth. Being able to go to different streets other than just the one that I was on, you know?
Exactly. And I remember Mongoose was a big thing in the mid 90s.
Yeah, for sure. They really took off.
I had this awesome bike. It was a Mongoose Combat. My dad bought for me specifically that got stolen from our porch, and it was like a huge loss to me because I used to take that to all my friends' houses.
That was the mode of transportation.
It was the only way I could get around.
Yeah.
You know, it was just a huge loss to me. And that was like one of the more memorable bikes. That and the Huffy, which was just a red bike. It was super generic.
Yeah.
It was just, it just said Huffy on it. I don't think
every
it even
single
had
person had
a name.
Yeah.
And then eventually I got tall enough to drive my dad's Huffy, and he had a Raleigh and a Huffy and a Trek bike. And the Trek and the Raleigh were really lightweight aluminum. So
Raleigh is another one of those companies.
And I could take those things and go so fast on the road to my friend's house and get there in no time. So they were like the two memorable bikes for me.
I never really rode, the road bikes that everybody talks about and long distance type stuff. I had from the Huffy, I went right to a I think it was like a 10 or 12 speed or something like that, but only had that really shortly. I did a little bit of bike riding out by the Kettle Moraine Trails just outside of Elkhorn near Whitewater, and that was only like a couple of years, but then I started to transition into the BMX world and got God, what was it, X Games? And then so that was like a really cruddy bike, but then I was like, let's pay some money to get some actual like decent biking, and I got like a GT.
That's really cool.
And
I had a Mosh bike, which was one of the later on though. I was probably like maybe in my late teens,
you and I were both skateboarders.
Early 20s, I had a bike that was like a BMX style bike, and obviously I was a skateboarder, so I didn't get huge on the biking. But that Mosh bike, it was lightweight. You could pick it up with one finger and balance it on your finger.
I kept trying to get into everything that there was to be into extreme sports wise. So motorized, not motorized, push or pedal, it doesn't matter. But I mean, honestly, this has been a thing in Wisconsin that we have all experienced.
Huge roots,
no matter where you are
for biking. Huge roots,
no matter who you are. Exactly. So
that's going to conclude our
we're gonna
segment today.
We're gonna introduce a couple of guests here, and stay tuned. All right, we are here today with Lindsay Stevens. You may know her as the founder and executive director of Rock the Green. And Lindsay, how are you doing today?
Hey, doing great. How are you?
I am doing well. It's been a really long week so far this week, but we're making it through, right?
The sunshine, and it's a beautiful day in Wisconsin.
It's very true. Yeah, the weather is really shaping up. So, so as I understand it, you have another event coming out on May 13th where you're going to be doing a concert with Willy Porter. Do you want to go ahead and give me a little more info on that?
It was Wisconsin guitar rock star.
Yeah.
So it's pretty neat. We are running we're still streaming our Rock the Streams that we wound up doing 18 shows last year. And out of the 18 virtual streams, we raised actually $30,000 for that were split between nonprofits in Milwaukee and musicians, which is pretty cool.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah. And so this stream on Thursday, May 13th at 7 p.m. Central Time is Willy Porter, and he is performing not only to raise funds, but also to honor the memory of Rock the Green's longtime friend, Dan Alkofer.
That's great.
And and it's neat. So this show is really cool because it's filmed at the barn, where actually we just were with the Earth Day celebration that you guys featured.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing that. And we're raising funds to repair Dan Alkofer's Magical Music Barn. And Dan, not only actually, I should circle back, Willy Porter actually played at Dan's at this barn for Dan's daughter's wedding.
Oh wow, yeah. So there's a really good tie there between them.
Yeah, there's a great tie, and Dan was a longtime friend of ours because Dan created a really amazing, sustainable, I should say, clean energy system that uses spin bikes.
Yeah,
and we have 12 people on these bikes, and with their leg power, they wind up generating the speed or the generating the power for the sound and lights to power the entire concert.
And that is such an incredible thing to see. If you get a chance to see it in person, it's really, really cool. And then on the stream, I think you'll be showing as well individuals pedaling as well, right?
Yeah, and you know what? I think we missed you. We need to get you on a bike at one of these shows.
I know. Russ and I could definitely. I mean, I don't want to say that we could do it alone, but I think you give us a couple of beers, we could probably stick in there for a while.
There we go. You'd be just fine.
Yeah.
We'd keep you hydrated.
Well, that's all. I mean, that's an amazing way to sort of bring everything full circle. You've got Willy playing, you've got the pedal power actually in motion, powering all of that, and in that magical barn. So
it's amazing. So Dan, sadly, he tragically passed away just after Thanksgiving, and we're raising funds for the barn because we did film a couple Rock the Streams there last summer, and the barn, part of the barn fire because there was a structure next door, another barn.
Yeah.
That was totally burned actually to the ground. We've got some images. It's really sad. But one of the barns burnt down, but it did catch fire to the music barn, and so that was severely damaged. And so the family needs another $10,000 to finish the repair of the barn that you'll see this stream.
Yeah, to revive, such an awesome, little venue for sure.
And so, and one other thing we did with Dan is this year for our 10th annual Earth Day celebration, we created in honor of Dan's memory the Dan Alkofer Earth Day Rockstar Award. And so
awesome.
You'll get to see, this presentation of this award to Angie, Dan's daughter, and Debbie, Dan's wife, at the Willy Porter show. So it's
awesome.
It's I
mean, there's a lot of really amazing things that everybody should tune in for. It's not just a Willy Porter concert, which is a reason enough, but you get to see all these other very really, really cool moments as well.
And it'll be a good time, and it is so fun seeing the cyclists in action. And so we'll get back to live shows too, and then you'll get to see that in person.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll be able to do that in person.
Yeah, you will.
I'll jump on, and I'll just jump right in. All right. So again, why don't you throw out the times again for this event and where they can find it?
Oh, good idea. So we'll be rocking it with Willy Porter on Thursday, May 13th, 7 p.m. And you can stream it on Rock the Green's Facebook or YouTube channels.
Awesome. That sounds like a great plan. And, of course, I'll be tuned in, as I was for Earth Day stuff too. So thank you again, Lindsay.
Oh, good talking to you again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure we'll meet up again soon for something else that we can collaborate with.
That's it. We're all about collaboration.
All right. Thank you so much. And I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, Eric.
All right. You too. Bye.
Bye.
All right, so we are here with Willy Porter today, and Russ is actually joining us as well via telephone. How are you guys both doing today?
I'm doing all right. How are
I
you?
am well. I'm doing well, Russ. Doing well. Good to hear you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Again, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule as well to kind of hang out with us today. So,
My pleasure.
And as I understand it, obviously I've been listening to your music for quite some time, and your most recent release is absolutely stunning. Just like the other, how many other albums do you have? Is this 11 total for you?
I think so. Yeah, 11 sounds about
Awesome.
right.
That's incredible. I can't even imagine writing only a handful of songs. So.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So
It's been a fun journey.
Yeah, and that's actually kind of the question that I wanted to ask you was, I guess, when did the journey start? How did you get into music?
It really started, kind of organically. My folks were really into music growing up, so grew up in a house full of music. But, then I had a guitar teacher when I guess I was 12 or 13, and she was great. She really got me into folk music, Bob Dylan and that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And that just, kind of spiraled into where I am now. So
absolutely. And those types of individuals are some of the best musicians, and they've been around and they've kind of stood the test of time. So it's the good ones that you sort of took notice of right away. So, which, proves a point in why your music kind of stands that test of time as well. So,
well, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess the next question that I have is, how did this new album sort of come about? Was it any more difficult recording and stuff during any of this time? And how are live shows affected for you these days?
The latest thing was really fun to do because I worked with a friend named Rick Probst, and it was really pretty easy for us to work together and work very fast. So, we're kind of at a spot where through doing this for a long time, you realize that, how you record music and how you capture a moment is really like a photographer. You could try to make a perfect composition of a photograph, but most of the time the stuff that you catch when people are just behaving as they normally do, that's far more interesting. So I really take that approach to music production today as much as I can, that, there's digital technology that will allow you to fix things and kind of take the humanity completely out of it,
right,
so that you have a very mechanized, perfect sounding music. And I'm just not a fan of that. I like hearing the odd mistake in there, and I like to hear people going for it. Like in a baseball game, if a guy reaches from the warning track for a fly ball but doesn't get it, you still love the effort that they went all the way for it. And
yeah.
Music's no different for me that way.
Yeah, that's a great point too.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like, I love the raw. And you can just tell music on the radio today is like formulated, and they use like the golden chords, they call it. And yes. I mean, I love the raw thing where it's just somebody with a guitar singing, or a band singing, and they leave the mistakes in there. I mean, it's great.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I don't want to go and see a perfect show. I want to go and see people going for it. I grew up, went to college, and the Replacements were hitting at that time. And
yeah,
I remember getting to see them one time and just thinking, at times they're the best band you've ever seen, and at times they're the worst in the same show.
Exactly.
This is really cool, but they're not phoning it in at all. And I think that music of that time really kind of stuck with me. So, today I'm working on a new record now. It's all about capturing people having fun. Before you know something so well that you're reciting it from memory, get it while you're still searching, you're still reaching a little bit for it, because that immediacy, and that energy comes across in the recording somehow. It's a really intangible thing, but I love it.
Yeah, it's one thing I always talk about, if you can find the music at Goodwill, the band's probably not that good. Like, you're not going to find a Led Zeppelin record or, a really great band on the shelves of Goodwill. You're going to find NSYNC and Backstreet Boys nonstop, but you're never going to find a good album.
Yeah.
So true. I mean, why is classic rock classic rock? I mean, why is Led Zeppelin so relevant today? I mean, listen to John Bonham and you hear a human being. You hear this guy who's thriving with everything he has, and it's unstoppable. It's a freight train. And so the same with Queen. I listen to those records and I'm like, man, with all the production and everything, there's still stuff in here where the chorus is a little faster than the verse is, like they might have played to a click track, but the drummer sped up a little bit.
Yeah.
That's what makes it music, So
yeah.
I'm a big proponent for that. And that's what I'm looking for, those bands that are doing that these days.
Yeah. One of my favorite documentaries Dave Grohl put out, and that's one of the largest points of it, is that the human factor in music is just as much a part of the instrument and a part of the sound as it is, and so going to tape is a little bit lost these days, but when people decide to do it, it really does something for the quality of the music. It just sounds so much better.
Yeah, it really does. It really does.
So yeah, go ahead. I was just gonna say, with kind of we're doing a bicycle episode, the bicycling history of Wisconsin, and I know that we are approaching another great Willy Porter show at the barn, and this one is to promote not Rock the Green necessarily, but a little bit different, a more meaningful thing maybe, and I wanted to kind of get your insight on it, so that way you can kind of plug what you're going to be doing.
Well, yeah, we lost so many fantastic people in the last year to COVID, and we lost people, to other illnesses as well. And one of the great audio engineers and musical spirits of Wisconsin, Dan Alkofer, who worked with so many bands through the years and was a musician himself. But as an audio engineer, I worked with him for 30 years. And him and his partner, music partner, production partner, Dan O'Brien, we worked and did lots and lots of shows starting in, the really early 80s. And so Dan passed, unfortunately, due to a heart condition. And he and Dan O'Brien came up with a wonderful idea several years back to create a system whereby people on bicycles power these generators that can then power a rock band's show, lights, and all the production needed for the show. And they called it the People Powered Concert Series, and they were really, it was kind of in its infancy in the last several years, but it was starting to really catch on, and different organizations would hire them. And, you could have teams of riders who would get on and they would raise money for various charities and so on while riding these bikes and watching the show. And it's just a wonderful way to involve an audience to a higher degree in the actual music performance, but also talk about green energy and green solutions and how much how people can really generate.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Dogs like green energy too.
Exactly. You know it. Yeah, sorry.
Dogs are going hard.
Yeah, they're definitely a part of this whole COVID and working from home thing. So,
oh my gosh, yeah, I have a completely unrealistic bond with my dog right now. It's just like, he's like, "You're home for a year? Are you kidding me? And then you're going to go on the road again?"
Exactly.
Already disappointed.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
But that's what the show is about. It's really about supporting, you know, and reaching out to Dan's family that survives him, his incredible wife Deb and daughter Angie and extended family, and also a celebration of, you know, all that he brought to so many of us, and that's why, you know, there's a GoFundMe to support his family that's a part of this, and Rock the Green was kind enough to come in and sort of support this show and give it a push. And so it's a neat confluence of very talented and forward-thinking individuals who are trying to support his family based on what he did for so many people. And so I can't say enough good about this guy. He's gone way too soon, and, you know, it's just it's a tough one. So
yeah,
we carry on the best we can.
Absolutely. And I understand that the show that you'll be putting on is at the barn and is powered by the pedals.
Yes, it is, which is pretty cool. And I think that's my first show coming off the bench as a solo thing. So everybody's a little rough around the edges, and it's just right. You know?
Absolutely. No, I think there's, as we kind of mentioned before, there's a beauty sort of in that itself. So
right on.
Awesome. And, you know, before we let you go today, I think what we're going to do is we're going to play one of your songs here in the episode. And I think that we've settled on Moonbeam. So I kind of wanted to get you to sort of introduce it. If there's, you know, any sort of a story behind it, let us know. And then we'll let everybody hear it.
Absolutely. This is a tune I wrote with the great L.J. Booth, another Wisconsin songwriter, and I had this guitar groove and the opening lines of this tune, and then he and I got to work and turned it into what you're about to hear. The great addition is the Carpe Diem String Quartet, because they joined me on a live show in Columbus, Ohio, a number of years ago. This was the first show we ever played together, and we got a wonderful recording of myself with their string quartet. It just puts the song in another zip code, I think.
Awesome.
So this is Moonbeam.
Such a welcome sight. Got nothing in my pockets. Walk with me tonight. Old cars in the tall grass, broken glass and chrome. Down along the railway, behind my parents' home. Hiding in the sumac, I'm waiting for the train. Got a penny on the railway. Hey there, little moonbeam, I forgot your song. Every crosstie tells me I've been gone too long. Seems to me that you give your light so free. I need you a little moonbeam. When I was a young boy, I balanced on this rail. I held my jacket high low. The wind would fill my sail.
All right. And again, that was Willy Porter, Moonbeam. I am absolutely head over heels for that song as well. He's right. It really does. It's like in a whole nother zip code with all that's going on there. And it's just so lovely. Russ, why don't you go ahead and introduce our next guest?
All right. Today we're here with Tom. Tom, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Fantastic.
Yeah. So Tom, you're the Tour of America's Dairyland and many other things. I mean, can you give us a little rundown of sort of maybe your earliest involvings of bikes and bike in America, bicycling in America?
Sure. But first, I'd like to say thank you for inviting me on, and mostly I'm super excited that a couple young guys like you are interested in history, even if it is the drunken history.
Exactly. Yeah.
We have a couple beers, and a lot of Wisconsin has a lot of beer revolved around it. So.
Yeah. I want to hear the can pop on the show. You guys pop that can, okay? Promise?
Yeah. Oh yeah. For sure.
Our marketing director for the Tour of America's Dairyland, Alyssa Weber, she's also the executive director of the Wauwatosa Historical Society, and she's young. And I used to be on that board because I'm old and I like history like you guys do. But all our board members, like most historical societies, are all old. So I encourage all young people to dive into history early because you have more time to learn about it. So,
exactly.
Good on you guys for going that direction. So as far as cycling in Wisconsin, it has an amazingly rich history. As you guys noted earlier, there's a great book about the early history of cycling in Wisconsin. What I can talk about is the last 40 years since I've been involved. Wisconsin has an abundance. There's many factors, but Wisconsin currently, and back 60 years ago, has an abundance of paved farm roads. When we look at surrounding Midwest states like Michigan, where I grew up, and Indiana and Illinois, downstate that is, and Iowa and Minnesota, they have an abundance of gravel farm roads. And, the reason for that, you guys know the reason why we have paved rural roads everywhere. For those that grew up in Elkhorn.
Yeah, exactly. the 1901 legislation of the side path commissions, which started here in Wisconsin, actually.
And then also the dairy lobby.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Wanted to keep the milk from curdling on the way to market because it was one of our major industries. And, the actual timing of that was, in the prominence of the automobile. I don't know all the details about that, but that is why we are so different than surrounding states here in the Midwest that have an abundance of gravel. And we'll talk about that later as it relates to gravel events. We don't have many gravel events like they do in Minnesota and Iowa and Michigan because we don't have many gravel roads. That's a good thing and a bad thing.
Yeah.
So number one, we have an abundance of great roads. So we've always had a rich cycling culture. The second factor, to my mind, is like a lot of other states, we have an immigrant culture. I know we have some Finnish history on the phone right now.
Yeah.
But mostly we have a lot of Germans. The German background in Wisconsin is extensive. And those immigrant cultures brought with them, no matter when they came, the following of bicycle racing. And so they wanted to get cycling started where they lived, and so they were familiar with it. So whether it was Italians, not so much Irish, but Italians, but mostly Germans in this state, they really, in the early days really got cycling going and kept cycling alive, I think, in the last 40 years to where we are with events like the tour, the predecessor to there was a predecessor, I'll talk about that, to the Tour of America's Dairyland, but that was run by a guy named Otto Wentz. Otto, very German guy. His parents immigrated from Germany. And then there were Polish and all these immigrant people that liked cycling from the old country, so they kept it going here. And then, of course, we can't forget about the industry that is developed here. And it's not just Trek, the largest bicycle company to independent dealers in the world, but many other suppliers to Trek, whether it's Pacific Bicycle and many suppliers that supply to the bicycling industry. So, we have kind of a three-prong attack as to why I think why cycling has continued to be such a big industry here versus, Indiana, Minnesota, et cetera, et cetera. California it's big, and so in Colorado too. But we're Wisconsin. We have great cycling, always have.
I agree, and even our snowmobiles have bicycle history. Most of the original developments were done from bicycle parts.
Yeah, it was an industrial product that grew out of, the bicycle was around before the motorcycle, and, the Harley Davidsons were playing around with bikes, and they added motors. And that's kind of how that evolves. But it was these industrial giants. And literally, you could do the research on how many bicycle companies existed in America at the turn of the century. And then, it slowly whittled down to where you had Schwinn through the 40s, 50s as the dominant player. And they maybe didn't take the mountain bike craze or fad as seriously as they should have, where other companies like Trek and Specialized saw that trend early and got their manufacturing process in place and were able to grow. But what you learn about cycling is it doesn't matter what kind of cycling you're doing, whether it's road cycling, whether it's mountain bike, gravel, fat bike, cyclocross, it's all cycling. So, that's the abundance that we have here. And you guys had mentioned fat biking earlier. That's, the next iteration. And there's going to be another iteration. Right. In 10 years, I just don't know what it is.
Super fat cycling, I think it is. And I'm going to lead it because I am super huge. So it won't be a long distance thing. It'll just be a short distance to the refrigerator.
But we love everything you've done, Tom, for the state. And we wanted to find out a little bit more about the Tour of America's Dairyland. How did you get that started?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the Tour of America's Dairyland is in its 12th year. We are going to race from June 16th to June 27th or 26th. We're not sure about our final day. Sure. It's been a difficult year to get secure our host cities, our partners who we partner with, 11 different venues. In the, coming out of the pandemic, we did not race last year because of the pandemic. But again, this will be our 12th season, 11th edition. We actually started whatever year that was, 2009, on the heels of another long-running series called Super Week, and that was run by the gentleman I referred to earlier, Otto Wentz. And he ran that thing for 30 years before we started a similar series. A little bit in conjunction with him, but a little bit on our own. We had some of the venues like the Great Downer Avenue Bicycle Race and the race in Waukesha and the race in Kenosha that continued from his series into our series. So we partner with a downtown business district like Wauwatosa or Bayview or Downer Avenue or Shorewood or Janesville and Manitowoc, and we put on a bike race. And it really comes, what it is, it's sort of, we look at it like a block party for the community that happens to have a national caliber bike race with racers from all over the country and usually all over the world. We usually get about a dozen or 15 countries that come and race, riders from those countries, and about 45 states are represented. So it's an event that people put on their calendar from all over the country as one of the best in the country. And many and most years in the last dozen, it's been the largest bicycle race in the country as it relates to participants, as measured by participants. But yeah, we just have some phenomenal partner cities. And again, it's been very tough on them and us to see a way clear in the pandemic year. But we are racing, and the racers are excited from around the country. We're hearing they're very excited. The communities are excited. It's amazing how anxious and ready and eager communities are to get outside and see their friends. And again, we're kind of like a lawn party or a block party. That's the atmosphere we want. And we tend to focus in the downtown area. If we came to Elkhorn, we would be right on Main Street.
Yeah.
You know, and that would be our finish line. And we might weave into the neighborhoods. But generally, these are, approximately 1 mile courses, and they go round and around and around. A question for you guys. Have you been to any of the Tour of America's Dairyland stages, maybe on Downer Avenue or in Bayview?
I haven't actually been to any of the stages, no, but when they've come into towns or areas where I've been, I mean, I definitely take notice.
Oh yeah, I watch all the time. I mean, like, I know when they came through Janesville, they'd close off a lot of the main streets and the main drags, and I remember seeing them come through a lot of times. And I lived downtown for a short time in Janesville area, so it was, some days it'd be like everything was closed down downtown basically. Yeah. And I used to watch the bikes come through, and it was just incredible to see these guys who've been already cranking for days still going just as strong as they were from the beginning. It's amazing to me.
Yeah, we're going to be in Janesville. They actually open our series with a Thursday, June 17th, and a Friday, June 18th in Janesville. And we just secured a second course that finishes up Court Street, that hill on Court Street, big uphill finish. And the first day finishes down sort of along the river in that new redeveloped area down on Main Street. But great partners we have in Janesville. We're going to race 2 days in Janesville, and then a few days later we'll race double days in Manitowoc.
Oh, wow.
We have some phenomenal venues, phenomenal courses, and that's what the riders really like. We take this, we have professionals, some of the best professionals in America and abroad, and we try to give all racers of all levels, from beginner to the pros, a professional experience, try to anticipate what they need. And one thing they love is challenging, interesting courses with lots of corners and uphills and downhills like you can get in Janesville because of the Rock River, and the hills around that.
Yeah, I know some of those hills are pretty tough. So I used to go downtown, and I would walk because my house was right on Garfield Avenue, which is like right in the heart of downtown. And I know how steep some of those hills are. Yeah. I'm going to be honest with you.
I got tired just looking at them.
I know some of those guys have to have thighs like the size of a tree trunk. Yeah. I mean, it's just incredible to go up some of those hills. So.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
So Tom.
Yeah, so that's, go ahead.
So I know you have a lot of history in biking. Can you give us a little history of yourself and how you got into cycling? And I know you have some pretty big titles to your name, so we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, so I've been, I'm basically a lifer in the sport, and I like to call myself the cycling savant, because there aren't many people that have been in it and worked in it their whole lives. I started out racing, in a club, one of these ethnically run clubs in Detroit, and it was really the only club in Detroit if you wanted to race. I started, just riding bikes and got hooked up with that club when I was about 15 and started to take it seriously at about 18 years old. And, just with a few years of being invited to be on the national team and go on trips, I ended up being on the Olympic team in 1980 in cycling. And that was the year, you might remember, we boycotted in Moscow. You guys don't remember.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
We're too young, but I do remember.
Yeah.
We're history buffs too. So,
because we were protesting. It was a Jimmy Carter administration. We were protesting the war in Afghanistan. Anyway, we protested, and then of course the Russians protested by not sending their team to America 4 years later when the Olympics were in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And when we were young cyclists, it's kind of like back then being a basketball player or a hockey player. Yeah, you can play college hockey, you can play college basketball, but you really want to make it to the NBA or the NHL. Same is true in cycling back then. You can go to the Olympics, you can go to the World Championships as an amateur, but your real goal is to race in Europe as a professional. So that was similar, my goal. So in 1981, the team I was on, which was the 7-Eleven team, started as an amateur team after those Olympics in 80. And after a few years of racing as amateurs in Europe, we turned professional. The whole team turned professional in 1985. And we were the first American team in the Tour de France in 1986. So my career as a racer spanned the whole 10 years of that 7-Eleven team. I started with that team. Then 10 years later, I retired with that team. And my last few years, I was actually more of a player coach, where I was not only racing. It's kind of cool. You can race alongside your teammates. In a lot of cases, I had some of the younger teammates with me, and we'd go around and we'd race, and then we'd analyze the race. And then these guys eventually would move up the ranks to become some of our best professionals racing in Europe. So it was a very satisfying 10-year span where I raced. And then after that, I started my own company managing teams of racers, professional racers. And we had many, many teams for the next 20 years, and started managing events and started developing cycling events like the Tour of America's Dairyland. So during that time, I moved during those 10 years with 7-Eleven. When I was a rider manager, I moved to Wisconsin because that 7-Eleven team, that first American team in the Tour de France, was based out of Milwaukee. See, there you go. It's
awesome.
Our cycling roots.
Full
First
circle.
American team in the Tour de France was based in Milwaukee because Jim Akowitz, whose father, his generation, more, immigrants coming, immigrant background, they knew bike racing. And Jim started this team that I was a part of in 1981 that eventually went to the Tour de France for many years in a row, starting in 1986. So again, Wisconsin roots. I end up here, start my own company doing a similar thing, managing teams of athletes and managing events like the Tour of America's Dairyland that have to do with cycling. So yeah, it's been, like I said, cycling's basically been my whole life. People say, what are you going to do when you grow up?
Yeah, exactly. Well, thanks again for your time today, Tom, and we really appreciate it. This was it was cool to have somebody on here that actually does a huge Wisconsin race, well known throughout the state, to come on the show. And as history buffs, we love everything you've talked about. It's awesome you've been in the Olympics. Again, this is Tom Schuler.
Is there a maybe a place that the listeners can reach out to see what's going on with the Tour of America's Dairyland this year?
Absolutely. Thank you. Yes. www.tourofamericasdairyland.com.
Awesome. That's perfect. It's straightforward, and I love it.
I love it. Thank you so much for your time, Tom, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunday. We really appreciate you coming on. It was huge to have you on for our bike special, and thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. I'm going to head out for a bike ride right now.
All right,
Sounds
enjoy.
Perfect. Have a good one. It's a nice day out today, so do it while you can before the snow comes again. So, all right.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, bye. All right, today we're here with James Davies from Bublr. James, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic.
Awesome.
So can you tell us a little bit about Bublr? Obviously, we love the name, the Wisconsin water fountain.
Right,
So
definitely.
we love the name. We love what you guys are doing. Can you give us a little history about Bublr in Milwaukee here?
Absolutely. So Bublr is a nonprofit, and it was formed. The nonprofit was formed in 2012, and we installed our first station in 2013 just to see if anyone would ride some bikes.
Right.
And that station was down at Discovery World, and people did in fact ride those bikes. So then in 2014, Bublr launched with the cool, as you said, Bublr name and all that associated water imagery to tie it into Milwaukee's history. Our uniqueness and of course those are fantastic lakes. And Bublr was founded by Bruce Keyes, Julie Kaufman, and Barry Mainwood.
Yeah, I remember when the ones went in over by Discovery World. I had a roommate that was working at Discovery World at the time, and I would drive him to work every once in a while, and I kind of took notice of this kind of weird looking bike stand that had a bunch of bikes at it, and we were like, "What is this? What's going on?" It was really cool though, really unique, but a better way of doing things than I could even have imagined. It's really awesome now.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. And so now we have 86 stations across Milwaukee, Wauwatosa, and West Allis, and just about 600 bikes in the system.
Awesome.
So yeah, we've grown a lot in that time.
It's such a cool concept to be able to not have your own bike, but be able to rent a bike. And I was going to ask too, is it okay if you rented a bike and dropped it off at a different station? Is that acceptable?
That is that is preferred. You know, we want people to use them. Obviously, we are absolutely fantastic with someone just checking the bike out and doing a loop and coming back. Especially our Discovery World station is right on the lake with some fantastic trails. But you know, we think that the best use of Bublr is to actually go do something. If you are, I know everything's different this last year, but
Right.
if you were working downtown and you wanted to go for lunch at the public market, to just quick grab a Bublr and take that down there and then have lunch and ride back, or a huge again in a normal year, one of our huge user demographics are UWM students.
Yeah.
And so we've got 3 stations on campus and then 3 stations near their dorms, and so when they're all fully in session, those are obviously used a lot for students to get back and forth. I'm making myself old. Kids.
Those darn kids. Yeah.
To get back and forth there. So yeah, absolutely, you can return to any station. We in fact had a Bublr super user 2 summers ago ride straight through and hit every single station in the system.
Wow.
That's incredible.
Was there a participation trophy that was handed out, or some sort of?
Yeah.
Did you acknowledge it?
Yeah. We did. Urban Milwaukee actually did a cool little write up on it, and we definitely acknowledged it. Yeah.
That's so
awesome.
cool. Yeah, and like just so we know too, how can we find a little information? Like, is there a website? I know the spelling is Bublr. Is there like a website?
Yep. www.bublrbikes.org. We've got all sorts of information there. You can also sign up for our newsletter, which you can sign up at our website, which we have creatively named Talk Around the Bublr. And that's full of great information. We get that out at least once a month, and then we usually have some intermediate ones with cool stuff we've got going on, or other. Actually, speaking of Lindsay, in our last little Earth Week blast, we linked to some of the stuff that Rock the Green has going on this week. So, or last week, whatever. When we sent it out, it was current.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's the thing is that, you know, we were also. I mean, when we reached out to Lindsay initially, it was just like, we would love to interview you. We saw that you follow us, and I had been to different Rock the Green festivals and absolutely loved it. And initially was just thinking, I'll interview her and see how she came up with the idea of Rock the Green, and that'll be it. And then it was like, no, I mean, she carried this relationship to a whole new level, and it was just incredible. So, and then eventually tied us into you as well, which is even more fantastic because you see the Bublr name all around Milwaukee and surrounding cities as well. And it was just something that, I guess I had always kind of wanted to know what it was and how it started. And I'm sure others are the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, most people now know what that we exist.
Exactly.
But might not necessarily.
Exactly. The Blue Bikes. You've seen them. You know Bublr. You've heard of it. But you don't necessarily know the story or the history behind it and why it exists. And that's what's the better part is kind of understanding. Hey, you know what? Not everybody has the ability to have a bike or own a bike, but everybody needs that intercity sort of transportation, and this is a very affordable way of doing it.
And also to that point, so we have an access pass for pretty much if someone receives pretty much any sort of state or federal assistance of any sort, they qualify for our access pass. And that's normally then only $8 for an annual pass. But this year and this summer and last summer, Anthem partnered with us to make that totally free.
That's awesome.
So if you qualify for the access pass, like if you receive food share or you're a resident of the housing authority of the city of Milwaukee, or you get Medicaid, we've got a form on our website. You can sign up. We give you a code. It's 100% free, $0.
That's amazing. So, and then, then you have some sort of transportation to the things that you need to get to,
Yep, absolutely. And we do have also on that, 80% of our stations are co-located with Milwaukee County Transit System bus stops. So we can really be truly part of that like first last mile solution, help sort of expand the number of buses you can get to. So if you, I know some days when I usually either bike in or take the bus, and some days I might miss that bus I was planning on taking, and being able to get to a different bus that can still get me to work,
right?
So I don't miss any important meetings,
No, for sure, and that's an incredible point too. It's not just, hey, I need to get to this appointment. It's hey, I just missed this bus, and now I need to get to the next one. And I can't quite run as fast as I need to. So let's jump on a Bublr. Let's drop it off at a station nearby, and let's get on that bus.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
And James, too, I know we've wanted to do a Bublr Brewery tour, obviously, and a lot of them are around the breweries. I've seen a few myself.
Yes.
There is some Wisconsin connection with bikes and beer. I don't quite understand.
Yeah. It's the bees of Wisconsin, the bikes, beers, bonfires, like backyards. It's all incorporated. And we obviously you won't be able to hit too many breweries. You don't want to get a bike, a BUI.
Yeah. But still considered a DUI though.
Yeah, no, it is. But we are really excited. We love what you're doing. And I love Bublr. I love the idea what you guys came up with, and I hope it's incorporated into more cities, honestly.
Yeah, and I hope that in the future that Wisconsin Drunken History and Rock the Green and Bublr and all of us can be paired and partnered in something great.
Yeah, no, I think we sort of we're laying the foundation here, I feel. So
yeah, absolutely. And it certainly is an amazing thing. And now, are you a Wisconsin native?
Yes, I grew up in Racine. So
okay.
I didn't grow up in Milwaukee, but pretty close.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
So
would you be opposed to answering a few questions to discover, just how scrawny you are?
Let's see how I can do.
All right, I'll go ahead and get this thing kicked off here. Let me know, have you ever participated in what we call jump around at Camp Randall Stadium?
I did my undergrad. I did my undergrad at Madison. I actually don't think I went to a game while I was an undergrad. I know that sounds horrible, but during orientation week, they had us go to the campus and do a practice round. Yeah. So I did it then, if that counts.
I'll count it. I mean,
That still counts as a UW Madison student myself. I was lucky enough, like it was expensive even for students to go to Badgers games.
Yeah.
To be honest. With you.
It was.
I mean, when you're working at Topper's Pizza and Subway, it's not cheap to afford a ticket.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be honest.
Well, and I was
Liquor.
working at my dorm cafeteria, so like I didn't even get tips or anything like that. So yeah.
Yeah, that's rugged. So that's really cool. And yeah, I do remember something similar to that when we had an orientation in. I remember the one thing I was really bummed about is having to take sociology every single semester, and I was like, because I like, you know, if you're somebody that struggles with like human interaction, I can understand, but like for me, it was like just such a loop to jump through every single semester. But yeah, no, I remember that originally when we first did it, I think there was actually Bucky the Badger was there, and they had us go to this orientation where we participated in a jump around that was simulated.
That's
so
crazy.
It's like
Yeah. Now, driving in Wisconsin, we all have a similar sort of obstacle to, and you know, get around is a deer. Have you ever hit a deer while driving?
I have not.
Okay, good. One of the fortunate few.
That's really incredible. There's not very many guests that we've had on here that haven't, so you are one of them, which is awesome, actually.
Yeah.
So the next question we got: have you ever been to Summerfest, and do you have a memorable band that you've seen there?
I have been to Summerfest, and here in fact, so you know how during the day they'll have maybe smaller performances.
Yeah, a lot of locals.
Yeah, so when I was in middle school, I was in this like summer show band with Racine Unified, and I actually played my clarinet at Summerfest.
I think I was at that show.
Oh,
I was in the front row and I was rocking out, dude.
you're hitting that windpipe hard.
Yeah.
right. Yes.
I could feel the air from your clarinet hitting me.
That's probably, you know, that's kind of disgusting, but
It is. It's not great.
So
a little spittle in there, you know.
Exactly.
So being from Milwaukee, have you ever closed Wolski's?
I haven't.
You have not closed Wolski's. That's okay though.
That's
honestly,
fine.
It's all right. And especially at this age, now that I have a kid, I don't think I could ever close it again.
No.
And I have too many grays, so it's out of the question for me. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Closing Wolski's is great, but it's also horrible at the same time. You know.
So, do you ever make beer brats? And is there a beer you use to make your beer brats?
Ooh. I haven't made beer brats.
That's fine.
And that's okay too. That's all right. I mean, a lot
Do you enjoy brats?
I do.
That's a win right there.
You got it. So we're giving that one to you, just right off the bat.
No, I mean you earned it. I mean you ate brats. So in my
I have
opinion,
eaten brats.
So what do you consider to be up north Wisconsin?
Oh, this is a good one because I think it's interesting because like doing my undergrad in Madison, like I don't think of Madison as up north, you know. So and I think I'm gonna have to go with everything north of Green Bay.
And that's acceptable.
That's
actually, that's
pretty...
yeah, because you're going past Amherst, you're going past Green Bay. You know, then you're hitting that Wausau, which is that line.
And I would almost
and like I feel you have to like Door County has to be included in however you define it. I feel
for sure. No, for sure. And,
so
Door County, like I consider Door County kind of up northy. I mean,
no,
for me,
I do 100%.
I mean, we're from like right on the Chicago Illinois border, unfortunately, but
yeah,
so that's definitely up north for us.
Yeah, no, I was actually gonna say, the last thing that's considered like the most Wisconsin is the Green Bay Packers. Anything north of that is kind of like, you know, there's not anything super noticeably Wisconsin. You know, nothing that everybody wears a logo of. You know, so
it's
as
all
soon as
flannel and chainsaws.
Yeah, as soon as you get north of that, it's like, you know, you kind of feel like that's where the north is.
Exactly.
The woods, the North Woods, you know.
Yeah.
And so I got a question for you as a Milwaukee native. Is there a brewery or a brewery tour you recommend in the area that you've seen or have been to that you recommend our listeners check out?
Right. Because you've been to probably at least a couple of them, right?
A few.
Yeah.
So I have to go like Lakefront is always fantastic, and they also have such great beers. But when you said that question, the thing that came to my mind immediately was actually a distillery tour. Can I say a distillery tour that I really like?
Oh, of course.
So Twisted Path. Down there, the distillery tour there is awesome, and the gentleman who owns and operates is a former CIA agent who.
Wow.
So like
That's intense.
Yeah, so it's like his dad's like a patent attorney and he's like a former CIA agent or something. Like, so it's a really good interesting tour. So if someone's looking for a distillery tour, I don't think they're doing them right now, but when things open back up, that's a great one. But I do love I love the lakefront building. Obviously they have a bubbler station right there. I love where it's located though, with that like marsupial bridge thing. And like they always have fantastic beers, and so I do. That is a good one.
Twisted Path, you might get an interrogation at the end, but hey, that's all right.
part of the whole experience is
you get drunk and then you get interrogated. Hey, are you driving home tonight?
Getting connected.
I don't know. Hopefully not. I'm grabbing a bubbler.
Yeah,
so we'll be all right. So no, thank you so much, and we really appreciate it, James. We love everything you're doing, and I hope you keep this up and maybe even expand to further cities because it's such a great...
well, it's not to a new city, but the city of Milwaukee actually is installing 26 new stations this summer.
Awesome.
And we're going to be adding some electric assist bikes to the system. So
hell yeah,
exciting things. So
hey, if there's ever like a ribbon cutting ceremony for one of these stations, we would love to be involved, even if it's just to be part of the press coverage or something. So we'll definitely because we're going to have to do something because we're like 86 stations and we're installing 26 more, so we have to do something for the 100th station, right? We'll be there at the 100th to meet you and to have our microphones ready.
All right. Sounds fantastic.
Thank you so much for your time, James, and we love what you're doing, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.
All right, James.
Awesome.
Have a good one.
so much.
All right.
You too.
Bye.
Take care.
All right, that concludes this episode of Wisconsin Drunken History Podcast.
If you enjoyed this vulgar display of Wisconsin, please like and subscribe on whatever streaming platform you prefer. And remember to hit the bell on YouTube to be notified when we release new content.
Also, if you have any suggestions or ideas for future episodes, please send us an email at widrunkenhistory@gmail.com or head over to our Facebook and Instagram pages.
Thanks again for listening, and remember, as always,
Watch out for deer on your way home.